For nearly 60 years, one question has refused to die. Not because there is too little evidence, but because there may be too much. In October of 1967, a man riding through a remote stretch of Northern California raised his camera toward a figure standing in the wilderness. What he captured lasted less than a minute. Yet decades later, that same footage continues to challenge scientists, skeptics, filmmakers, and now even artificial intelligence. The strange part? After all this time, nobody has been able to prove it was fake. Not professional investigators. Not special effects experts. Not modern computer analysis. And certainly not AI. Because when advanced systems recently examined every movement, every frame, and every detail of the most famous Bigfoot footage ever recorded, they uncovered something deeply unsettling. The film still refuses to explain itself. And that raises a terrifying possibility. What if the mystery was never about whether Bigfoot exists? What if the real mystery is what was standing in front of the camera on a quiet afternoon in 1967? For generations, stories of enormous human-like creatures lurking in remote forests have circulated across the world. Different cultures gave them different names. Wild men. Forest giants. Hair-covered beings that seemed to exist somewhere between myth and reality. Most sightings came and went like ghost stories, impossible to verify and easy to dismiss. Photographs were blurry. Witnesses contradicted one another. Evidence disappeared as quickly as it appeared. But one piece of footage refused to fade away. The Patterson-Gimlin film. Recorded deep within the wilderness surrounding Bluff Creek, California, the footage shows a massive upright creature walking across an open clearing before disappearing into dense forest. The clip is only 59 seconds long. Yet those 59 seconds have fueled one of the most heated debates in modern history. Believers call it the strongest evidence ever captured. Skeptics call it the greatest hoax ever performed. And neither side has managed to win. Over the decades, researchers have dissected every frame. They studied the creature's proportions. Its movement. Its posture. Its stride. Its apparent muscle structure. Every detail became a battleground. The deeper investigators looked, the stranger the footage became. Unlike countless alleged Bigfoot sightings that emerged afterward, this film offered something unusually rare. Consistency. The figure's movement appeared fluid. Natural. Heavy. Not like a man stumbling inside a costume. Not like a prank designed to fool viewers. Something about it felt disturbingly real. That alone was enough to keep the controversy alive for generations. But the mystery grew even deeper when physical evidence entered the picture. Near the location where the film was recorded, investigators documented enormous footprints pressed into the ground. Casts taken from those prints revealed anatomical details that sparked endless discussion. Researchers pointed to signs of midfoot flexibility and structural features that appeared difficult to replicate with ordinary human feet. Whether those findings proved anything remained disputed. But they added another layer to a mystery that refused to disappear. Then came the modern era. Artificial intelligence. Machine learning systems capable of analyzing movement patterns, body mechanics, image consistency, and digital anomalies with extraordinary precision. Many believed AI would finally settle the debate once and for all. Either it would expose the film as a clever fraud, or reveal evidence that something genuinely unexplained had been captured. The results surprised everyone. The systems could analyze the footage, measure it, map it, track every movement. But they couldn't explain it. No obvious signs of manipulation appeared. No hidden seams. No clear evidence of staging. No digital indicators pointing toward an elaborate trick. Instead of solving the mystery, the technology seemed to make it even stranger. Because if modern tools couldn't confidently expose the film as a hoax, then what exactly were people looking at? To understand why this question still matters, you have to understand the men who filmed it. Roger Patterson wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a university researcher. He was a man consumed by a single obsession: Bigfoot. Long before the famous encounter, Patterson had immersed himself in stories of mysterious creatures reported across North America. One particular book ignited his imagination and altered the course of his life. After reading accounts of legendary ape-like beings said to inhabit remote wilderness regions, Patterson became convinced there was something hidden beyond the reach of ordinary observation. Something waiting to be discovered. Most people would have moved on. Roger Patterson did the opposite. He dedicated years of his life to searching. Again and again, he ventured into isolated forests, convinced that evidence was out there. Somewhere. Waiting. His search repeatedly led him to one specific location. Bluff Creek. A remote region already surrounded by rumors, sightings, and strange reports. Dense forests covered the landscape. Visibility vanished within yards. If a large unknown creature wanted to avoid detection, few places offered better protection. During earlier expeditions, Patterson claimed he found unusually large footprints impressed into the soil. To many people, they meant nothing. To him, they meant everything. Those tracks convinced him he was getting closer. And from that moment forward, he refused to quit. Years passed. Friends lost interest. Expedition partners drifted away. Critics mocked the search. But Patterson kept going. Eventually, only one loyal companion remained beside him. A rancher named Bob Gimlin. Unlike Patterson, Gimlin was not driven by obsession. He simply trusted his friend. And in October of 1967, that trust would place both men at the center of one of the most controversial mysteries ever recorded. Neither of them knew it yet. But their next ride through Bluff Creek was about to change history. October 20, 1967. The California wilderness was quiet. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were riding through the rugged terrain near Bluff Creek, following a familiar route through the forest. Nothing seemed unusual. Then everything changed. Ahead of them, something moved. At first, neither man could fully process what they were seeing. A large figure stood near a creek bed. Not on four legs. Not hiding among the trees. Standing upright. Watching. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. The creature appeared enormous. Nearly 7 feet tall by some estimates. Its body was covered in dark hair that shifted naturally as it moved. The proportions looked wrong for a human. Too broad. Too powerful. Too balanced. The figure seemed aware of its surroundings, as if it had been attempting to remain hidden before realizing it had been seen. Then instinct took over. Roger Patterson leaped from his horse. His heart racing, he grabbed the camera he carried for moments exactly like this. Moments he had spent years searching for. Moments most people never experience. The film began rolling. What happened next would become one of the most analyzed sequences in modern history. The figure walked calmly across the clearing. Not running. Not panicking. Not behaving like an animal startled by human presence. Instead, it moved with a confidence that many researchers still find difficult to explain. Then came the moment that would become legendary. The creature turned its head. Just slightly. Just enough. A glance over its shoulder. One look directly toward the camera. One frozen moment that would haunt investigators for decades. That single image became known as Frame 352. Perhaps the most famous frame in cryptozoological history. To believers, it was proof. To skeptics, it was the perfect illusion. To everyone else, it was a question mark that never went away. Patterson continued filming as steadily as he could. Meanwhile, Bob Gimlin remained alert. Neither man knew whether the creature was alone. Neither knew what might be waiting beyond the trees. And that uncertainty created a new fear. What if there were more? The possibility lingered heavily in the air. As the figure moved farther away, it eventually disappeared into the forest. The film ended. Abruptly. Just 59 seconds. Less than a minute of footage. Yet enough to fuel arguments that would outlive both men. When the immediate shock faded, Patterson and Gimlin returned to examine the area. What they found only deepened the mystery. Large footprints stretched away from the location. Deep impressions in the earth. Evidence that something heavy had passed through. The men quickly gathered plaster and returned to preserve what they could before weather or time erased everything. Those footprint casts would later become almost as famous as the footage itself. Researchers examined them repeatedly. Some argued the prints showed anatomical features inconsistent with ordinary human feet. Others dismissed them as fabrications. But just like the film, no explanation managed to satisfy everyone. The mystery survived. And then the scrutiny began. Years turned into decades. Experts from countless fields studied the footage. Photographers, filmmakers, anatomists, wildlife specialists, special effects artists. Each approached the film with a different theory. Most arrived expecting to expose it. Many left with more questions than answers. One of the most frequently repeated claims was simple. The creature was merely a man wearing a costume. At first glance, the explanation seemed reasonable. After all, extraordinary claims require ordinary explanations. But there was a problem. Nobody could recreate it convincingly. Not in the 1960s. Not in the 1970s. Not in the decades that followed. Every attempt revealed flaws. Costumes folded unnaturally around the joints. Artificial fur behaved differently in motion. The illusion collapsed under close examination. Yet the figure in the Patterson-Gimlin film continued to behave differently. Researchers pointed toward subtle details. The shifting shoulders. The apparent movement beneath the hair. The distribution of weight during each step. The way the body maintained balance across uneven terrain. None of these observations proved the creature was real. But they complicated the idea that it was merely a man in a suit. As technology improved, the scrutiny intensified. High-resolution scans allowed investigators to study details that previous generations could barely see. Digital stabilization removed camera shake. Frame enhancement revealed features hidden within the original footage. The expectation was clear. Eventually, technology would uncover the trick. Instead, the mystery grew stronger. Artificial intelligence entered the investigation decades later. Advanced systems were tasked with evaluating biomechanics, gait patterns, body proportions, and motion consistency. The goal was straightforward. Find evidence of deception. Expose the illusion. Provide answers. But the algorithms encountered an unexpected problem. The movement appeared internally consistent. Weight distribution followed realistic patterns. Joint articulation aligned with physical motion. The body's center of gravity behaved naturally. Nothing immediately suggested a fabricated performance. For some researchers, that finding was deeply uncomfortable. Because AI was supposed to simplify the mystery, not reinforce it. And yet the data seemed to suggest the same conclusion reached by generations of analysts before it. Whatever appeared in that clearing, it was far more complicated than a simple costume. Still, skepticism remained alive. And perhaps nowhere was that skepticism stronger than in the claims that surfaced decades later. Claims that threatened to rewrite the entire story. According to one controversial account, the famous creature wasn't a mysterious unknown being at all. It was a local man. A man who allegedly wore a suit. A man who claimed he had participated in one of the greatest hoaxes of the 20th century. For a moment, it seemed as though the mystery might finally be solved. But the deeper investigators looked into that confession. The stranger the story became. By the early 2000s, many people believed the mystery had finally found its answer. A new claim emerged. A claim that seemed capable of destroying everything. According to a controversial account, the creature seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film was not an unknown species at all. It was a man named Bob Hieronymus. The story quickly spread through documentaries, books, and media outlets. If true, it would end decades of speculation overnight. The alleged explanation was straightforward. Hieronymus claimed he had been paid to wear an ape suit and walk through the wilderness while Patterson filmed him. For skeptics, it sounded like the missing piece of the puzzle. At last, there was a confession. At last, there was a human behind the legend. But almost immediately, problems began to appear. And the more investigators examined the story, the more unstable it became. The biggest issue was evidence. There wasn't any. No photographs of the costume. No surviving pieces of the suit. No documents linking the alleged participants. No receipts proving the arrangement. No physical proof whatsoever. Only conflicting memories told decades after the event. Then came another complication. The costume itself. A costume maker named Philip Morris claimed he had supplied the suit supposedly used in the hoax. But his description didn't match Hieronymus's version. The materials were different. The construction details were different. The accounts contradicted one another in critical ways. Two people connected to the same alleged hoax were telling two different stories. And neither could provide tangible proof. Instead of solving the mystery, the confession created another one. Researchers compared the claims against the film itself. Again and again, inconsistencies emerged. If the creature was wearing a suit, where were the seams? Where were the folds? Where were the visible distortions normally created by bulky costume materials? Frame-by-frame examinations failed to reveal obvious signs of artificial construction. Even modern recreations struggled. Special effects artists attempted to reproduce the figure using the same theories. The results never matched. The movement felt wrong. The proportions looked artificial. The illusion collapsed under close inspection. Even Philip Morris reportedly attempted to recreate the alleged costume years later. The outcome only fueled further debate. The recreated version looked exactly like what skeptics claimed the original should have looked like. A suit. Not a living creature. Not a convincing mystery. Just a costume. Yet the figure in the Patterson-Gimlin footage continued to appear fundamentally different. That distinction became increasingly difficult to ignore. Then artificial intelligence entered the conversation once again. Researchers applied modern image analysis to the footage, hoping advanced systems would finally identify evidence of padding, prosthetics, or hidden costume structures. Instead, they encountered another dead end. The expected signs weren't there. No obvious hollow spaces. No indications of rigid artificial components. No visible clues suggesting a performer concealed beneath layers of material. The longer the footage was studied, the less it resembled a conventional hoax. And that realization created a new question. If it wasn't a costume, then what was it? Some researchers turned toward biology. Perhaps the creature represented an undiscovered primate. A relic species hidden within remote wilderness regions. A surviving branch of evolution that somehow escaped scientific detection. One popular theory linked Bigfoot to Gigantopithecus, an ancient giant ape that once lived in Asia. At first, the idea seemed promising. The size fit. The strength fit. The mystery fit. But eventually the evidence worked against it. No confirmed fossils have ever been found in North America. And the species is believed to have disappeared hundreds of thousands of years ago. The theory weakened. Like so many others before it. Yet none of the alternatives fully explained the footage either. Not bears. Not humans. Not known primates. Every explanation seemed to answer one question while creating three more. As years passed, the Patterson-Gimlin film became something larger than evidence. It became a symbol. A crossroads where belief and skepticism collide. To believers, it represents the strongest visual case ever recorded. To skeptics, it remains an extraordinary claim awaiting an ordinary explanation. To researchers, it is something even more frustrating. An unsolved problem. Because despite decades of investigation, the central question remains untouched. Not whether the film is authentic, but whether the subject itself is authentic. Modern analysis has confirmed details of the location. The terrain shown in the footage matches Bluff Creek. The environmental features align with the area where the encounter allegedly occurred. The film appears rooted in a real place. A real moment. A real event. But reality does not automatically provide answers. And that is what makes the story so enduring. Roger Patterson spent the rest of his life defending what he believed he captured. Bob Gimlin did the same. Both men endured ridicule. Accusations. Public doubt. Yet neither abandoned their account. Neither admitted to a hoax. Neither changed their story. Whether that consistency proves anything remains a matter of opinion. But it became part of the mystery itself. Today, Artificial intelligence can generate realistic faces from nothing. It can simulate voices, create worlds, reconstruct ancient environments, predict patterns hidden inside massive datasets. Yet after examining one grainy film recorded in 1967, it arrived at a surprisingly unsatisfying conclusion. The footage appears genuine, but the subject remains unknown. And perhaps that is why the Patterson-Gimlin film still fascinates people nearly 6 decades later. Because technology has answered many questions, just not the one that matters most. What was looking back at the camera that day? A man in a suit? An undiscovered species? A survivor from a forgotten chapter of evolution? Or something else entirely? No algorithm has solved it. No expert has settled it. No investigation has closed the case. The creature continues to walk through those 59 seconds of film exactly as it did in 1967. Unhurried. Silent. Unexplained. And after all these years, it remains just beyond the reach of certainty. A shadow crossing a clearing. A glance over its shoulder. And a mystery that refuses to die.